to Design Thinking in the Circular Economy with Zoé Bezpalko of Autodesk. I'm Alexandra Knezovich. I'm the program manager at the Toilet Board Coalition. The Toilet Board Coalition was created by business for business leadership on SDG 6. Our mandate is to catalyze a global, robust business sector to deliver smart and sustainable, resilient sanitation for all. We run the Toilet Accelerator program, where we work with multinationals and entrepreneurs serving low-income consumers to design bespoke mentorship and project plans to create breakthrough instances in the sanitation sector. If you'd like to learn more, you can find more at our website or email me after this interview. We created the Toilet Accelerator Fast Forward series to activate the Business of Sanitation network and provide more opportunities for businesses large and small to share expertise and make connections. Today, we're with Zoé Bezpalko, the Impact and Design Lead at Autodesk. Hi, Zoé.
Hi everyone.
So our conversation today is about design thinking and the circular economy. And thank you to those that sent in questions. We're always happy to hear from you and to make sure that these conversations are relevant for you. So Zoé, perhaps you can start off by telling us a bit how you came into this work.
Sure, thank you so much. So the idea was here to introduce a little bit myself and sort of give you an idea of how I came into that field. So I was actually trained as an environmental engineer. I've always been really sort of driven by impact. And so after graduation of my master's degree in environmental engineering, I had the chance to work on a project called the Leapfrog Project. And the idea was working with designers and manufacturing companies in Southeast Asia on helping them introduce eco-design and sustainable design principle in the way they were designing and making products for the European and American markets. So here you can see on the slide, it's actually an example of one of these products that we worked with, which was one of the furniture. And we really looked at integrating principles such as material reduction and change of material, different transportation to reduce the overall footprint of this product. And so the management of this project over 3 years in Southeast Asia, I learned a lot of different things. The first one is this idea of a product life cycle that you understand in what a circular economy is, meaning really the idea of a product is not only what you see, but it's also the material and when it comes from, even the transportation, you need to really think about what type of energy is fueled into your product across its life cycle. But beyond the product itself, I think that what I really understood is this idea of impacting on a whole system, So it's not really only about the transportation of the product, but it's also about the companies that is making them, the employees that works in this company, even the distributors of this product. And so you really need to think about the whole system. So for instance, like you can use, when you use better material or better finishing, actually you create better conditions for these employees in the companies that we work with. Or for instance, you can also create the best product that is the most environmental friendly, but if you don't have the right distribution channel, then your product don't have any impact. So it's really thinking about this whole system approach. And then something that I also learned on this project is the idea of communicating value. So in the slide, I show you how we communicate value across through the reduction of CO2 emission, which is a great data point for environmental engineers and geeks like me, but it doesn't tell much to other people, and particularly with the stakeholder that we were working with in Southeast Asia, where really some of the organizations there are right now trying to grow very fast and try to reach some type of economical level. And CO2 reduction is really not part of their priorities. And so really trying to understand about how the work we do is not, always generating money. So how do we communicate the value? How do we measure the work that we do in terms of impact when we communicate this value? So that was kind of like the big learning, and this one was really what fueled me into, one of the passion and something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, which is really how do we measure impact? How do we communicate the work we do? And then finally, just on that, after this project and working with designers, really what brought me to the field of design. After that, I moved to San Francisco to do an MBA in design strategy that really gave me a lot of tools around design thinking that I wanted to, use as sort of a toolkit to deliver more impact. And so today I'm at Autodesk, and it's kind of like merging these three passions around sustainability and technology, and then design as, and all with the intention to deliver as much impact as possible.
That's fabulous. Thank you. And so our second question is, how do you measure impact?
Yeah, so I mean, as I was saying, this is kind of a passion of mine, and I could really talk about that for hours. I do like 90-minute workshop on it, so let's try to make it in like a 5 minutes. But the way I like to introduce it, it's through the lens of a theory of change. So you can go to the slide, and really it's a little bit dense, so I'm just gonna talk through it, and hopefully you'll be able to understand. But really, the theory of change is a tool that is very broadly used in the philanthropy field. So I hope that many of you actually use it into your work. But it's really and it requires a whole system thinking. So we look at the definition of impact, something like impacting the long-term effect of an activity on the well-being of an individual and a community. So here there is like two major elements of impact. It's thinking about the timeline, so we're talking about long-term impact, and then the stakeholder, meaning we're not talking about only an individual, but it's community and the ecosystem in which this community are growing. Mm-hmm. So when you look at these two tracks, meaning both in terms of time, where an activity can be looked in terms of short-term output, mid-term outcome, and long-term effect. And then, an activity can be looked at not only the one individual stakeholder that you're trying to target, but how it's going to impact the ecosystem in which it lives. It's really how you start having this whole system approach to impact. So to give you an example about how we can use this theory of change, a very famous example is educating women. And girls, and there are a lot of studies that have shown that basically when you educate women, the activity itself is like, placing a girl into a school. But then you've proven that, in terms of, short-term outcome, you have an educated woman. In the midterm, you show that some formal education lead to, these women learning more about contraception, marry later, have fewer children, are better informed on nutritional needs of these children. And then this study have shown that in terms of long-term impact, actually educating girls and having educated women in a country increase the GDP of an entire country. So that's what I'm talking about impact, and talking about long-term impact and the impact on an ecosystem. And so what I try to encourage people to do is really to take this framework, to apply it to your own project. So if you want to go back to the slide, you have two ways of doing it. It's like either you can put your activity under the activity section and think and brainstorm with the whole system thinking about how it's going to lead to certain type of impact. So really thinking about the different, how your activity on the long term gonna look like. And the other way you can work with that is that you can actually place your intending impact. So what is the mission of your organization? What are you really ultimately trying to achieve with what you do as the impact, and then work the other way around on what do you need to get there. So I really encourage people to try to think about and use this tool in every project they do. I think you can use it at different scale. You can use it at the mission level of your organization, but I worked with students and I'm like, place your career goals in there. Sometimes you can even use it at the level of a project, and then your timeline is just different. And then the next step after, getting into this mindset and trying to think about impact in the long term and with different stakeholders is trying to put metrics and layering metrics. And so this is why it can be a very long workshop to do together. But the idea is that once you have your theory of change and you've really brainstormed all the different steps, placing metrics and how you're gonna get there is not that difficult. So then you're gonna just start, counting number of beneficiaries and the growth and your success there. And so that's kind of the second step into that.
Fabulous. That's awesome. Thank you. And so moving on in our questions, Zoe, can you explain why I, as an entrepreneur, should be thinking about design?
Sure. Well, so I think there is, there's a lot to say here because there is sort of a fuzzy definition of what design means into our world. And so, for Autodesk, for instance, it's design is sort of this upstream process by which things are made. So that's what I put in the slide. And really, it's because we are thinking of Autodesk core industry that are product design and architecture. So we really want to see design as something like it's a process that uses our tools and that ultimately creates something that is real into the world. But through my studies and through the work that I have done and sort of the thinking that I'm building around whole system thinking, for me, design has a way broader definition. And it's really about the idea that as a designer, my goal is to change the status quo. And when I'm thinking about designers, even like if I design a chair, my goal is that the chair is more comfortable or is lighter. Or the idea is like I'm changing the status quo into a better status. And I think this mindset of like we are all in the work of trying to make something better. And so in a sense, we are all a designer. And then for me, I think that in design, there is a lot of different tools that comes with this mindset. And so it's about sort of using tools at different moments.
That's fabulous. Excellent. Great. Well, then the final planned question is, how do I build design thinking into my workflow?
Yeah, so a little bit, I mean, it's kind of following up with the question I was saying before, which is like, okay, so now that I, think about design as like being able to look at a whole system, being able to, have an understanding that I'm trying to improve the status quo, and then I have with, using frameworks for measuring impact or, the theory of change, I have an idea of what it takes to get there. Then I think the next step is really thinking about design as, or pretty much design thinking as a toolkit, And so in the slide I put in there, the idea is that I'm pretty sure people have seen this framework that is kind of showing the design process and how messy it is because, you always start really big, with the whole system, and then you narrow down your idea, and then you want to go big again. And then you always sort of, in the lean approach, you always go back to the drawing board and you brainstorm. So it's kind of this idea. And then what I was trying to do is to put some tools in there to just show that, there is a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of frameworks that are available, for people to use and for entrepreneurs to use. And I think that each of them are relevant at different times and also based on different ecosystem or environment or even challenge that people are facing, So in my work, I introduced a lot Autodesk Fusion 360, which is a CAD tool, to do 3D design of products. And what I'm telling people is that it's not a magic tool. Like it's not something that you're going to start using Fusion 360 and you're going to have the best product available.
Right.
You need to understand principle like, sustainable design principle, how material works. You need to understand how manufacturing works. Like you can design a perfect product on your computer, but if you don't understand how people produce it, how you can manufacture 10,000 pieces of it, it's not going to help you, down the road. So, and that is not something that the software really teach you, so you need to kind of have an understanding beforehand of this concept. And so in this slide, I'm also showing other tools like, for example, the user research and building journey map. This is like a great tool when you are trying to collect insights from your customer and you're doing interview. And it might be like really useful at the beginning. And you might go back because you need also to sort of, after you have your product in the world, you might also want to go back to your customer and interview them again. And same, I think another tool in this slide, which is the business model canvas, which I think is a great tool to look at an entire business model, as like a whole system approach. And same, I think it's a great tool to use once you have an idea of what your business is going to be, what are the product, and then it's going to help you figuring out the other elements. So your distributor and your channels and your marketing approach and like all these different tools. So it's kind of this idea that I think you need to pick your favorite tools. You need to know that they are there. But I think that really the mindset of a designer is being like adaptive to its to a situation, to the moment you are in a design process, and also just like embracing the fact that it is a messy process, that things will always shift, and then it's your ability to bounce that with the tools that will make you succeed.
That's fabulous. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, I know at least a lot of the Toilet Board Network and the entrepreneurs we get to work with, they have incredible technology, and they spend a lot of time putting a lot of thought into the customers and the need that they're meeting. But then sometimes that transition to the business model or to a commercially viable business is a large leap. And after having put in so much work up front to then have to go through a whole nother stage of design basically around the business itself, that can be a real challenge. So to have a tool, it sounds like from the business model canvas of what you've described, that sounds really, really fascinating, and that it could be quite valuable. Do you
I definitely recommend as building businesses. It's something that I actually even used it for more mature businesses, but it really kind of helps you to have sort of a vision of an entire organization in like one single sheet, and like really thinking about how the different element works together. So it's definitely a tool that I would recommend anyone to at least check out and try to fill up for really thinking about all the different aspects of the business. Sometimes you forget about channels or distributors or cost, revenues and so on. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, any final thoughts, Zoe, that you wanted to add in? We've kind of covered all our planned pieces.
Sure. Just in general, like what I'm trying to build my career on and telling people is this idea that impact and really the think of the work that we do in terms of positively impact the people and the planet that we work with is a mindset. It's something that I embody in all my life, from my own little habits to the work that I do, and sort of this theory of change principle and this slide that I show you, it's something that I'm trying to teach people to integrate in their project, even if the project itself doesn't have, a clear, like, I want to save people, or a clear, like, I want to say, like, just reduce environmental emission. But really thinking that sometimes a project can have unintended impact, and you want to plan that, and you want to try to maximize the positive impact that you have. And so really, if I can do a little bit to get in the mind of people so that anytime they start a new project or they do something in their life, they think about it in terms of how they can positively impact our people or our planet, then I think I succeed in something.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's something that probably really resonates with a lot of the entrepreneurs that will watch this, because I know that it inspires us every day, that's really a huge focal point for their lives as well. And so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
can I add just one more thing on like more of the Autodesk side? So I work in the sustainability and foundation team, and I would just send a message to all the entrepreneurs in your group that are we do have program of software donation for non-for-profit startups, entrepreneur innovators, where we provide free Autodesk software as well as learning resources and so on. And so if anyone is interested, definitely should go on our website, or try to maybe connect with you to connect with me. But we do work on using and leveraging Autodesk resources to support organizations like the one in the Toilet Board Coalition. So I would definitely welcome anyone to apply to that.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us, and please do feel free to send us an email if you have any questions for Zoe, or if you'd like to learn more about some of Autodesk's different programs. You can reach us at fastforward@toiletboard.org. Until next time, thanks everyone, and thank you, Zoe.
Bye.